Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. Wednesday, February 21st. And I thought I'd start off with one of my songs that I wrote, which I've done recently, but I've got a point to it today, and I'm going to sing it again and tell you what that point is after we're finished. And I thought I'd tell you the chords ahead of time. The song is Dirt Farmer. I wrote it in the key of D, dog. And I'm going to see if I can slide this over just a little bit. Might make it easier to, well, maybe that didn't help. I thought it would. Let you see my fretboard a little bit. But anyway, it's in the key of D. It goes to a B minor, and then down to a G, and then back to the D. That's what it does quite often, but sometimes it just goes D, D, A, and then down to G. So anyway, it's either B minor down to G or A down to G, just so you can kind of see that. And the B minor's way down here, the A's right there, and the G's down there. There's my D. I'm an old dirt farmer, scrape a living from the soil, like my father before me. I labor and toil, but my father said, son, you should move away. He said, farm life is dying, son, please don't stay. So I moved to the city, and I tried to fit in, but I thought of my father and how the crops would get in. And I could hear him say, son, you should move away. He said, farm life is dying, son, please don't stay. I returned for a visit, but I was too late. My father lay dying, and I knew it was fate. But he turned and said, son, you should move away. But I just couldn't leave him, and he knew I would stay. Now I'm an old dirt farmer, I scrape a living from the soil, like my father before me. I labor and toil. Well, the point behind that song today, I was watching a YouTube video this morning, and somebody just made a comment. It doesn't really matter which video, but he made the comment that we're all completely removed from the farms these days. You know, nobody knows anything about farming these days. And, you know, it made me think, you know, there's lots of people that, well, they'll make fun of a farmer type thing, and and then there's the other side of the coin is these people that make, well, not make fun, but they don't like, or they say they just absolutely hate, like, processed food and process this, process that. Well, all that comes, of course, from a farmer. And I got to thinking about it, and these are thoughts that just run through my head all the time. I have thoughts like this all the time, and I don't know if you guys do the same thing or not, but I got to thinking, what would happen? Let's just say for a second there that we just cut out all the processed food that comes from farmers, for the most part. And we cut it all out, every bit of it. We just said, nope, we're not going to have processed food anymore. Let's say every one of those companies that does that shut down today. It's not that terribly unlikely of a scenario under certain circumstances, you understand, with the wars and all the different things that happen in this world these days. Just how many days, I'm not sure we'd have weeks. How many days, if weeks, how many weeks would we get by before it was absolute, utter chaos, terror in the streets, everything? I mean, nothing would be safe. Just think about that for a second. For one, I don't make fun of farmers for sure. And processed foods, while they may not be the best, they absolutely feed billions, And just think about it the next time that you're bad-mouthing something like that. It's pretty amazing because not a single one of us are in touch with that anymore, and just think of how many millions upon millions of people rely on those exact things and how quickly the world would be turned upside down if any of that went away. It would be beyond explanation. There's no way you could understand what would happen. It would be ugly and in a heartbeat. So I like my farmers. I never make fun of a farmer with my mouth full. Dicky's Jam last night. We had a real nice jam. Unfortunately, Gary was ill, I think, with the flu or something along those lines. He said he had been saluting the porcelain god. So he didn't come, of course, but we had Bill and Beverly and Don were there, and myself, and had a real good jam. Had a lot of newbies there that really seemed to enjoy it, took our information, planned to watch us on our live shows on next week, Thursday night. So it's not tomorrow night. It'll be next week, Thursday night, the 29th of February. We'll have our live show. Right now, I'm planning to do it from my man cave rather than here in the shop. And don't know how that's all going to work out. But what I'm planning to do is that Thursday morning's vlog, I'm planning to have it all set up and ready to go up there. And then I will, test out the mics that morning in the vlog and make sure it's all working. And then that way I can hear it during the day and kind of know if it's set up approximately right or not. It's all breaking new ground again. So anyway, but that's the plan. So next Thursday, the 29th, mark your calendars for 7 o'clock p.m., my time, of course. And that's Central Standard Time in case you're in a different country here. It's called Central Standard Time in the United States. And anyway, moving on from there, the video status. I got to work on the video a little bit yesterday afternoon after I worked on JR's electrical panel. Now, picture this, folks. Electrical panels, if you know anything about them, most people are absolutely scared to death of them. They don't want to touch them. They don't want to get near them. And I've worked on them pretty much, well, I wouldn't say my whole life, but my whole adult life, ever since I was probably 20 years old, I guess, somewhere in that neighborhood. So they're just almost second nature to me. Don't bother me one little bit to work on one. Except under this particular circumstance. Let me explain it to you. All right, you got a picture. It's a spider web of wires coming into these, 200 amp electrical panels, right? It's a mess. If you look at it, I'm sure those of you who know nothing about these things, they look at it and you think it's a total mystery how it even works at all. And again, it's just a web of wires. And lots of voltage coming in there. It's enough to kind of make your necktie stand straight out, if you were to get a hold of the wrong thing. Well, anyway, so I probably took me 15, 20 minutes just looking at it on how I'm going to do this, because the goal was to take this big panel. You know, when a panel is rectangular like this, wires coming in from all directions underneath. The big feed wires in this case were coming in from underneath. Sometimes they come in from the top. Sometimes they even come in from the side. But these feed wires, the big heavy cables coming from the pole, are coming in from underneath like this. So those are big. Each one of those wires, there's 3 of them. Maybe 4. Well, there's 4 in this case, but 3 of them are about the size of your finger, and the other one's maybe a little bit smaller, about the size of your little finger. So there's 4 big, heavy wires, and you don't bend those kind of wires very easy. And keep in mind, those are hot. I can't unhot those. Those are hot. Well, all I did, so I'm studying this, trying to decide how am I going to turn it around. That's really what it amounts to. It's facing out into the hall, so this side's into the hall, and he wants this side, the business side of it, he wants it facing inside this utility closet type thing, which makes more sense. I mean, you know, having it in your hall is kind of stupid. So this way you can drywall over it, and you don't even know it's there when you're in the hall. Okay, so I've spent all this time, I've labeled things, I've done all kinds of work, I've taken loose everything that I have to take loose. There's still, the main wires are there, and there's still quite a few other wires that I've decided I don't have to take loose, that I can actually spin this box with these wires attached. You'd have to be there to see what I'm talking about, but it made sense. So, all right, I'm ready to spin it. So I've got a hold of this box now. Keep in mind, this thing's, you know, there's some juice in this box. There's no way to turn it off. So I've got a hold of this box, and I'm turning it around. You know, and and it's working, and except that it's kind of hard to twist those big wires, and it's kind of catching, and so I'm struggling with it a little bit. It just doesn't move right away, and right about that point in time where the most tedious part is, guess what my knucklehead son does? He walks up behind me and gooses me and goes like that. You know, you just can't. I mean, that's like if somebody had like a gun to your head, had the trigger cocked, and had their finger on the trigger, and you walk up behind that guy with the gun and you goose the guy with the gun. That's the wrong time to do that. Anyway, it was pretty nerve-wracking. Let's just say it that way. I did get it done. It worked just fine. To punish him for that, I made him crawl under the house while I more or less pretended I couldn't get it turned around. And I said, you're going to have to go down there and figure out what this caught on, because it ain't turning. You know, so he had to crawl underneath this crawl space in the rocks and mess down there. That's a mess. It is a mess. And anyway, so I got him back a little bit there. I made him spend quite a bit of time down there. I kept saying, no, it's not working yet. Anyway, you don't mess with the old man. But I did get it turned around, and I got it all hooked back up. So I was done with it by about 2:30 in the afternoon. Then I worked on my video till about 4 o'clock, and I got 2/3 of the way through the second draft. So, you know, it took me quite a while there, but we're getting close. So I'll have a video out before long here. I'm not going to say what it's about, because that just spoils the surprise, you know. I thought I would just mention to you, this is just a bonus, okay? A bonus little story here. It won't cost you any extra. But I thought it was a pretty good story after I thought about it, and I thought, as I tell this story, think of you being the person, what do you call that? The center of attention in the story. Pretend you're that person, okay, in the story, okay? The interested party person, I guess. All right, so here's the story. I'm at, I've told you my friend Gene Smith, he built airplanes and stuff, and he also played music. So we were at a jam at his farm, and his farm is beautiful. It's kind of like my farm on steroids. His farm is way bigger. I mean, like, mine goes a mile down the valley. His probably goes 2 miles at least. And man, I'm kind of thinking it goes further than that down the valley, and it's really wide. His valley is at least 3 times the width of mine, I would say. So it's a huge place. And in addition, and I'm not sure it's attached, but in addition, he's got another place around the road a little ways from there, and it's got this beautiful lake and a little pavilion thing, kind of like what I'm kind of doing with my water wheel house and stuff. I mean, it's similar to kind of thing, but this was a large pavilion that you could picnic under and hold jams under. So we were there at this jam. So I'm just trying to set the scene so you kind of understand the kind of place we're at. It's a very, very rural, a very remote type of location. Woods, surrounded by woods and stuff, but there's a big lake right on the edge and this pavilion. And we're all under this pavilion jamming. And I looked down. I don't remember if it was a man or a woman, to be honest with you. I was focused on the situation. And I looked down on the floor. It was a concrete floor. And under this person's feet was a copperhead snake. Right under their chair. Right next to their feet. And the copperhead snake... And I know a copperhead. Trust me, this was a copperhead. This was not like some king snake that looks like a copperhead. This was a copperhead snake for sure. And so anyway, it's right there at their feet. Nobody sees this thing except me. And I'm looking down and I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to do here? How do I want to approach this? Because I don't want them to jerk and move real quick. Because if they do, that sucker's going to bite them. Those snakes are not real forgiving. I mean, they're not out to get you. Don't get me wrong. But if under situations where they're kind of cornered or feel at all threatened, they'll bite. Boy, there's no doubt about it. So I think it was J.D. Fritchie, but I'm not really sure. It may have been a woman. I can't remember who it was, who was sitting in the chair. I really don't. But I do remember this situation because I was focused on the situation. And anyway, I said, now, I don't want to alarm you. I really want you to be absolutely, completely still. I don't want you to move at all when I tell you what I'm going to tell you. And I mean, seriously, do not move at all. Please keep completely still. And of course that person's like, what? What's going on here? I said, I'm just be sure you don't move, okay? I'm going to tell you what's going on. There's a copperhead snake right between your feet. Right down under your chair. And I said, I don't want you to move. So anyway, then I went and got something, I don't know, a stick or something, and they didn't move, fortunately, and I got a stick and I raked it out of there and we got rid of it. But it wasn't that big a deal. We didn't kill it. We just got rid of it because, I'm not really afraid of them. I respect the heck out of them. I definitely don't want to get bit. But if that were you, could you sit there? But anyway, it was just one of those things that happen when you're out jamming out in the country, And here, incidentally, I think I've told you this before, but when we bought this place, you can't even begin to understand how bad this place was when we bought it. You really can't. You can't, the firecracker guitar, this place was a firecracker guitar. I mean, it was like that. It was horrible. There was weeds growed up 10, 12 feet tall, vines, blackberry vines, trash piled everywhere. I'm talking refrigerators, stoves, it looked exactly like the city dump. Well, for the first, I think, 4 years that we were here, every single year we killed more than a dozen copperheads right around the buildings and things for the first 4 years. I mean, it was infested with copperheads because of all the trash and the brush and everything. So I know all about copperheads. One of them we killed, and some people still don't believe us, but we've got it skinned out. I should show it to you, I guess, if I can find it. I'm not even sure I can find it now, but we skinned it out. It was a copperhead that was 42 inches long. That's a huge copperhead. I'm sure they probably have come bigger than that, but that's a big, big big Copperhead. You just don't see them like that. Usually Copperheads are 18 inches, 20 inches, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah, but anyway. Okay, moving on. That didn't cost you any extra. Those of you who are deathly afraid of snakes or spiders or things, could you have sat there? You know, I kind of think it was J.D. Fritchie, but I don't remember. And he's a guy that's a little older than me, very good mandolin player. And anyway, I think it was him, and he just sat there because he's a good old country guy, you know, and he knew better than to move. But anyway, the topic for today is luthier skill sets. There's, I've got one, let's see, I've got main topics. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 skill sets. I'm going to read the big topic first. Okay, so there's repair. There's building new or whatever from scratch. There's, restoration. There's setup. And then there's playing. I threw that one in kind of for extra. One of those skill sets is they are all, well, the playing, let's accept the playing. The other 4 are very, very, very customer dependent or customer relationship, and the customer attitude really comes in there. But one of them is super, super difficult with customers. Do you know which one of those it is? Repair, building, setup, and restoration. Well, I can tell you it's setup. Oh my gosh, setup is the hard one. And you think, really? But it really is, because that's where the rubber meets the road. Setup is, it's the, I can't think of the fancy words. I know all these fancy words. I can't think of them, but it's the deal where you make contact with the instrument, the setup. You're the player and you feel how it's set up, and you know when it's right and when it's not right. And that's the one that will give as a luthier, that's the one that will give you the most heartburn, is the setup. Repair is kind of 50-50. Repair is kind of 50-50. Some people will eat you alive on the repair, but most people are just so happy to have their instrument repaired. So this is probably an 80-20. 80% of the people are so happy to have their instrument repaired, you could almost do anything and they're just tickled to get it back and have it working. The other so many percentage, not so much. It's got to be absolutely perfect when you get it back, kind of thing. So the setup is the most customer affecting, if you will. The setup is the one where it's going to chew you a new one, whether you want one or not. And the setup is super, super, super customer important, if you will. So know that as a luthier, that you need to hone your setup skills, because that's the one that's going to eat your lunch. The repair one is probably your second most. The building, of course, is important, but generally speaking, your customer don't have to buy it if they don't like what you're building. So that one's not so much. I mean, it's important because you won't get any more customers if you don't do real well with your building. And then restoration is kind of like the repair thing. It's kind of like the repair thing. Most people are so happy to have their instrument just restored, and repair and restore is kind of a fine line between the two anyway. But the restoration can be very picky depending on the customer's idea when they give it to you. In other words, are they wanting it like factory restored, or are they just, again, is it more of just a playable restoration type thing? So anyway, I just thought I'd mention those big skill sets. And then within the skill sets, I thought I'd talk a little bit about a few things. This kind of goes to the question somebody had yesterday. What would be your suggestion, if you're going to build an instrument from scratch? What's maybe the best advice? And I tell you what, after thinking about it again, and I've given this advice before on this channel, but I really go back to it, and I say this is my best advice. It's going to sound a little lackluster to some of you. Until you do this, you won't understand it, I don't think. And that is, your best advice is, you're not building a mandolin. You're building this little piece right here. You're not building a guitar. You're building whatever this piece is right here. You're not building, any other instrument. You're not building the whole instrument. You're building this piece. And if you can focus down to that level, that's all it takes to make a really, really fine instrument. Focus down to that piece. Make that piece perfect. Set it aside. Go to your next piece. Make that piece perfect. Set it aside. Go to your next piece. And just keep working like that. Then, of course, at some point, you got to put it all together. Another very, very important thing about luthier skills, and I've mentioned this countless times in videos and things, is order of operations. And I mentioned it yesterday. It's very, 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 very important. And that is that, sometimes you'll get ahead of yourself. I've never done it. Yeah, right. I do it all the time because I'm always in a hurry. But, you'll get ahead of yourself and you'll do something and you go, oh, dang, I should have done this first. So try, if it's better for you to write it down. I didn't typically write it down. I just didn't. There was too much, at some point there's too much to write down, if you will. You spend more time writing than you'll do anything else when you get so many instruments coming in all the time. You just kind of get a feel for your order of operations, if you will. But when you're new at it, it might be best to write it down. What am I going to do first? What am I going to do second and third? And keep it like that. Because sometimes you got to undo what you did, and that can be harder than fixing the thing in the first place. So keep order of operations in mind all the time as well. Another thing would be, and this is a double-edged sword. So don't just hear one thing here when I say this. And that is, you should be always striving to make it better, improve your skills and perfection, striving toward perfection. We all know there's really no such thing as perfection, but you can still, more or less be perfect in some things. The point is that the double-edged part of that is you can take that to an extreme. You have to know when good enough is perfect. It's perfect for this situation. And you don't want to take things to an extreme, because the other thing you have to always weigh out is, am I taking this to such an extreme that I'm driving the costs through the roof? So you always have to keep those things in consideration as well. I don't know. These are just my thoughts, and about these different skill sets and things that you have to kind of keep in mind, I think. Let's see here. The last thing, and this is the one, probably my biggest weakness. Well, first, partly because I'm colorblind, and partly because you don't do enough of it in a way, is the finish work, your finishes. You need to get pretty good at doing finishes. I'm certainly not near the top on finish work. I'm not even near the top, but I was adequate, I think, on most of my finish work. But finish work is tough. It's way tougher than you would think. It's one of the hardest things about building and repairing instruments is doing the finishes. So you ought to study up on that and learn how to do finishes really well. And it would certainly help if you're not colorblind. That's for sure. Let's see, playing, that skill set, I haven't really talked about it yet. And I've mentioned this, I think, yesterday or sometime about playing. I think it's an important thing. Somebody asked me, do you think you have to play to be able to build and repair? You know, probably you don't have to. I would say if you get right down to it, you don't have to. But I think you ought to. I think you ought to be able to play a little bit, because how are you going to know if you've got a good setup? How are you going to know if your sound is right until you learn how to play a little bit? And I think it's an important skill to go along with it myself. I don't think it's absolutely required, but I'll tell you, there's been a few builders that I know that aren't very good at playing at all, and generally speaking, their instruments aren't all that great. I'm not going to name any names, but I can think of a few here in Missouri that, boy, as far as I'm concerned, their instruments were like holding 2x4s in your hands. You know what I mean? They just weren't very good at all. It's because they weren't musicians, you know. And I think if you were a musician, it will improve what you're building. So I think it's an important skill set. So I do think you should learn to play something. Okay. There was one more point I was going to make there that I made I've thought of while I was saying that. Can't think of it right now, though. It's done escaped. My plans for today. I need to finish that video. I need to cut some more firewood. It's the never-ending firewood saga here. You never get it done. I don't care if you work on it every day. You'll never get caught up. I need to work on the auction software. I'm not going to get all this today, I can tell you. I need to get in there to the office and get caught up again. I'm behind on emails again. I'm behind on all kinds of paperwork. And then I need to get back on sawing cedar. I really need to get on that because I need to get a whole bunch more siding cut. I need to get some more, 2x4s and stuff cut. And so I can get back on that water wheel project. So those are the things that are on my plate. And, then I get a few other interruptions every once in a while. Let's see. Rod Wentler is at the top. That just completely amazes me. What really amazes me is how he does it every day. That's what really amazes me. John Pepper is next. Bill Mumbo. And then Dottie Hildebrand and Rubbish Guitar Bloke. And then I'm looking for question marks here. There's a long one. I don't know if it's a question or not. Bill Mumbo. Hi, Jerry. Fixing up an old guitar for a family member. It played out of tune. I found the bridge was fixed in the wrong place. Measured scale, length, and put the bridge in the right place, and all is good now. Yep. Yeah, if you were to ask me the single most important thing on building or setup, I would say it's intonation. It's intonation. The companies do intonation just by measuring. I don't do it that way. I do it by the actual sound and by your tuner. That's why they don't do it. It takes forever to do it that way. Well, I shouldn't say forever. It just takes you 3 or 4 times longer than it would to measure it. Probably maybe 5 or 10 times longer even, if I'm being accurate. So that's why they don't do it in the factories. They can't afford the time and the manpower it would take, not to mention the potential for causing a problem on the instrument. I mean, like a scratch or, other problem. So doing it the way I do it, and you've seen it in countless videos where I attach the tailpiece on there, and then float the bridge around till I get it exactly where it ought to be to make it sound the best. There's no better way to do it than that I know about. Now, there may be these modern machines that think that they know all this stuff that can do that new machine. I forget what it's called now for setup that is pretty much computerized. That thing may be fine. I don't know. I shouldn't comment one way or the other on that because I know nothing about it. But in terms of the manual way to do it, the way I do it, I think is probably the most accurate way you could possibly do it. And because it just works, and it's not one of those deals that is a guess. There's no guesswork to it. It's pretty much precise, and it's as good as you can do on that particular instrument when you set it up that way. So if you were to ask me what's the most important thing, it's intonation. So if I were you as a new luthier and you're trying to get into this, learn about intonation. And don't fall into all the hype about intonating at the nut and all that kind of crud, because that is not the way you do it. You know, yesterday's discussion, I showed you how you measure from the nut to each fret. You start screwing with the nut, you're screwing with every fret. Don't screw with the nut. You do what you want. If that's what you want to do, feel free, knock yourself out. But I'm telling you right now, that's not the way you should do it. Mess with your saddle, your scale. You got to assume that your scale is correct, because that came from the factory unless you're cutting your own. And I have cut my own. I would say my first 5 or 6 mandolins, I cut my own fretboards. But I realized that I couldn't do it any more accurate than the factories were doing it, so there was just no point in it. So that's why I started buying factory fretboards. So you just have to assume that the factory fretboard is perfect. And then your nut is the place where that fretboard is measured from, so you don't mess with the nut, and you just mess with your saddle. And there are people that will argue that you can never get it perfect doing that. And I'm telling you, you can get it so dang close that nobody cares. So there you go. Do what you want. I'm just telling you what I know from doing it so much, you know, and it works. It works every time. It doesn't work sometimes. It works every time. I have never seen a case where it didn't work. So there you go. That's why I get so huffy with the banjo players, because they're always telling me it won't work on a banjo. It does. It works exactly the same. There's no difference at all. Zero, none, not any. Carolyn Fike has a long one there. Hi, she's talking to Dottie. All right, moving on. I'm not going to read that one. Let's go down. Looking for question marks. We're still in the before we went live section. Paul Lanier, good morning, Jerry. Folks, grass cutting time. Oh, my gosh. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Already cutting grass? My wife would love that. She just loves to cut grass. Go figure. Dottie Hildebrandt. Hello, Jerry. I think I need a chirp. Okay, well, you got one already. Thank you. Bill Rhodes. Good morning, Jerry. I was just wondering if you had fixed your truck. And I guess you're talking about the dump truck. And no, I haven't yet. I still have that to do. That's, I could have added that to my things to do also, but that was just plans for today. I'm not going to get to the truck today. I got to get caught up on all this other stuff, and then the truck will be coming up before too terribly long, but it's just not going to be right away. Bill Webb's got a long one there. He's just talking about the temperature and riding a motorcycle. And let's see, DE says, do you think Rod sets his alarm so he can be the first to chat? I have no idea how he does it. I have no idea. I'm amazed, though, that he's always the first one, or almost always. Glenn Snyder is the first one after we went live. And he says he's from Southern Ontario. Love all you share with us. Well, thank you. Well, you're welcome, Glenn. Thank you for being here. There's Michael 2X. And moving on down, D says that was just the chirp she was hoping for. Well, thank you. Somebody else said it was their favorite song. Well, thank you. I know it. My banjo player, Leon Pruitt, he always says that's his favorite song is Old Dirt Farmer. It has a lot of meaning to me because while I was never a farmer, if you will, from that perspective, I mean, I lived on a horse ranch growing up, but I was never a farmer, but a lot of my grandparents, great-grandparents, were farmer-type people, and even to some degree, farmers. Like my great-grandfather, he farmed that gigantic field. I mean, this field had to be at least 1.5 miles long and at least a half mile wide, if not wider. You really could, just across the field, you could barely see a person all the way across the field. It was so far. I mean, I have no idea. And he had one leg that was about this much shorter than the other, and his favorite activity was plowing, and he plowed that whole field. I can't imagine plowing that with a horse, a team of horses, or mules or something. I don't know. I think they were horses. I was a little kid. I do remember him out in the field, though. And he liked to, because that one leg being shorter, he could put that longer leg down in the furrow, and the other leg would be up on the flat ground, and he could almost walk flat that way. So that was his favorite thing. And he was a huge man. I mean, his shoulders would have made football players, cry. I mean, he was huge, just enormous man. And anyway, it's just pretty cool. So I've got a lot of ties to the farmers. That's why that song's important to me. Dottie says, mighty fine chirp. Preston Johnson, is that the Redwood top mandolin? Love the sound and really great song. Thanks. Well, yeah, this one, according to my notes, it says Redwood, and it looks like Redwood to me also when I'm looking at it. That's what it looks like. It's really fine grain. I don't know if you can see how fine the grain is. Yeah, I think you can there. It's kind of focusing. Very fine grain top. It's a good mandolin. I actually was a little leery of it coming here. I got to be honest. I'm just being honest. I thought, it was a long time ago I built it in the 90s. And I was afraid it wouldn't be all that great because you got to understand, this was built just before I took the Lloyd Loar mandolin apart. But as I've told you also, and this thing's not quite focusing again, as I've told you also, the differences that I found between the Lloyd Loar and the way I was carving them already weren't that terribly great. There were several places where I needed to change what I was doing, but not that many, really. So I'm pretty happy with it. I really am. I think the sound of it's pretty darn good, and I think it's just going to get better. It just needs playing. It's been sitting forever. Whenever an instrument sets without being played, I guarantee you that sound degrades until you get it vibrating again and get it to come back, and then you can hear the difference. It don't take long, and this one's already starting to wake up a little bit, and it's still not completely focused, and it just bugs the heck out of me. All right, moving on. Carolyn Fike, I may not be on a farm anymore, but I do know how to farm. I'd give anything to be back on the farm. Yep, I understand that. It's a nice lifestyle. It really is. I wish that would focus. It just bugs me. Anyway, Dottie says there'd be a lot of starving people in about a couple of days. Yeah, and can you just imagine if that would all fold? You may not think processed foods are all that great, but I bet you'd be begging for a mouthful of it in just a very short time. It wouldn't take very long at all. I would say a few days, just a few days, and it would be just be utter chaos. I don't even think you could describe the chaos. I don't think it'd be possible to even expect what would happen, and it would be a disaster. Bill Webb, I can still remember how excited I was when my pawpaw, Bradford, would plow up a row of taters. I didn't mind picking up potatoes because I loved fried potatoes. Yes, and fried potatoes for me is where it's at. I like everything real healthy. The more it's fried and the thicker the grease, the better I like it. Sugar, salt, and preservatives, that's all I eat. Bill Webb, that's me around electricity. A man's got to know his limitations. Yeah, I'm fine with electricity. I really am. I of all the building trade skills, that's the one I think I know the most about. And I don't think I'm even an expert at that. I just know enough to be safe and know how to do it and how to approach it. But I don't think I'm an expert. Bill Webbs says, when's the funeral, Jerry? I know I would have killed him. Yeah, and he was just laughing. He just thought that was the funniest thing. And I'm seriously telling you guys, that's not the time to mess with somebody. When you got I don't know what the total voltage is in that thing, but I'm going to say for sure it's 220 volts, and I kind of think it might be 440 actually, but I'm not saying that for sure, but it's probably 220. But anyway, it's not the time to mess with them. With anybody when you're really at the very critical moment. I mean, it'd been different if I'd have just been, monkeying with something and he did that. But I got this in my hands. This whole electrical panel is in my hands, and I'm trying to spin it around, and it's resistant. It's not wanting to spin, but I knew it would. And keep in mind, there's still live electric wires going into it. I mean, there's, I didn't disconnect any of the 120 circuits, the 110 circuits. I didn't disconnect any of those. And you can imagine how many of those there are. So all those wires are still connected. I knew I could spin it with those connected, though. The way this was, you'd have to see it. But I knew I could spin it with those connected. I knew I could spin it with the base wires connected. So I didn't want to disconnect any more than I had to. And so all that's live. And I'm... What a time to give somebody a goose, I wish this thing would focus. I'm about ready to throw this stupid camera in the trash. I mean, these are good cameras overall. There, it finally did. I guess it heard me. Oh, my gosh. All right. You just have to threaten it. Bill Mumbo says is it three-phase? Not by that definition, no. It's just your single-phase type connection. It's not like commercial. I don't know very much about three-phase at all. That's where if I'm lacking on electric, that's it right there. But this is not three-phase. I don't know really anything about three-phase, honestly. 110 circuits, 220 circuits, I'm good to go. I know pretty much anything and everything I need to know about those. Gary Hayden, and not to just pat myself on the back, but just in case you still have your doubts, I've told this story before too, and this made this inspector so stupid mad. I can't even tell you how mad it made him, and it just put the biggest smile on my face, because you know me, I'm not real crazy about this stupid government restrictions and all the government, got their hand in your pocket all the time type things. And in St. Louis County, the law was you cannot do your own plumbing and you cannot do your own electric on your own house. You can add on, you can, drive nails and stuff, but you cannot do your own electric and your own plumbing. So this inspector, he's just making that a big point. And he says, no, and I'll shut you down if you do. And you won't be able to do this and you won't be able to do that. And you'll be in court and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, let me just explain something to you. I am going to do my own electric, and I am going to do my own plumbing, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. And he's pissed. And I said, look, I know there's a legal way to do it, and I'm going to do it. So too bad, so sad, And he said, so you might as well just tell me what that legal way is, because I'm going to do it. He said, well, you got to go to Clayton Courthouse, and you got to pass the contractor's test. I said, fine, I'll go do that. So I did, and I got a 97 on the plumbing. I missed one question on the plumbing out of, I don't know how many questions they had, but it was a lot. And I missed one. I didn't miss any questions on the electric. So for those of you who think, yeah, he's just talking, I do know about that stuff. So it's not like I still don't think I'm an expert. I know enough to keep myself safe, and I know enough to do it correctly. And that's good enough. Moving on down, Gary Hayden. I don't farm per se, but I do garden. My favorite green bean is called Missouri Wonder. I save seeds from each crop. I know you don't like vegetables, but have you heard of them? No, honestly, I haven't, and it's probably just because I could care less about vegetables. So, but no, I haven't. I haven't heard of that. That's another kind of a gimmicky thing too, and it's all greed. It's all it is that these companies have patented their seeds and they've made them where you cannot grow them save the seeds and grow them. Like yours has to be a heritage type seed in order to be able to do that. Because like if you, the corn that grows out in the fields these days, you can try to save seed on that if you want to, but it ain't going to grow worth a darn. It'll come back as a stalk, but it won't have much in the way of ears on it and all that. And they've got that all genetically modified and all this kind of crud to do that. And again, it's all greed. It's all corporate greed is really what it boils down to. And a lot of the things are patented. And even if you can grow them, they can sue you for it if you do it, and it's just a mess. It's just, again, it's just everything in this world that's screwed up, you can trace it back to greed. That's really what it boils down to. Pretty much everything. Dowdy Hildebrandt, the snake would not have to bite me. I'd hurt myself getting away. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people like that. I know two, well, one of them's deceased now, but I know two really large men. I mean, like football player type men. I mean, great, big body, strong, heavy duty men. Could knock me down with one finger. I mean, they're that kind of big guys. And both of them, and I'm not kidding you when I say this, both of them would jump out of a moving truck if you threw a spider in their lap. I'm not kidding you. They just absolutely terrified of spiders. I mean, terrified like you can't imagine. And I'm thinking, like, I could care less. I just, brown recluse, we got them all over the place here. And I just walk up to them with my finger and just do that. It's like, big deal. Take that, brown recluse. So I don't know. It's funny how people have crazy fears. Now, having said that, do I have any fears? Heck yeah. I'm crazy afraid of heights. I don't like heights, man. I can do it up to, I can even do it up to 2 or 3 stories if I have to. I can make myself do it, but I am trembling the whole time. I'm so busy holding on, I can barely do anything. And that 65-foot tower I put up on top of the hill, I mean, the first time I had to climb that tower, I am not kidding you, 65 feet, guys, is really high. If you have no idea how high that is, unless you've climbed up a little skinny pole about this big to the top, my hands were so tight. I was so scared. I could barely do anything. After I did it about the 5th or 6th time, I actually got where I could do it. So I've got fears too, but most of mine are around heights is the most fearful thing. Where I think that comes from, and I still think to this day, I remember distinctly where it came from. And that is, my dad used to build these, he was some kind of a contractor and got a job like as a foreman on these lakes in Honeywell, Missouri. And they were building these giant lakes and things. Well, they had culvert pipes and all kinds of stuff. And he, when I was real little, I don't know, I'm going to say I was 3 or 4 years old, probably. He set me up on one of these things, and I didn't know what I was sitting on. I just sitting there, and he was going to take my picture sitting on this thing. And I looked down, and it as a little kid, it looked like it was 100 miles to the bottom of this thing that I was sitting on the edge of. It scared me to death. And from that point on, I think's where I got my fear of heights. I really do. I'll never forget that. Moving on down. Let's see. Kind of wonder if I didn't move on me here. Bibster's Repair Shop says, he says, been catching up on some of the older repair videos, thinking of doing my first fret job on a guitar. Any tips? Well, everybody has their method, and my method is to wet it down. And, there's people that are going to say, you can't wet it down. It causes the wood to swell. and it tightens up the frets. Well, that's wrong. It doesn't, because wood doesn't expand lengthwise. I mean, the amount it expands lengthwise is so minor. It's so minor that it's not even a consideration. Sure, it'll expand widthwise, but you're not wetting it down and keeping it wet for days. You're just soaking it down. The reason I like to wet it down on a fret job is because it softens the fibers on the end so that when you pull the fret out, it doesn't tear it as bad. Will you still get tear out? Absolutely, you will still get some tear out. But you just, and the way my best method for getting it wet, you can try all kinds of things, but my best method that I settled on is you take a pretty damp cloth, not quite where it's dripping out, but fairly wet, and if my fingers are frets, you rub it this way on the frets. You go across the frets like this, and what that does is it forces that water under the edge of the fret and gets the wood wet under the fret. So I do it back and forth like this. That's the method I settled on, and it really does seem to work the best. So that would be my tip on fret work, is to wet it down pretty good. I've tried the heating method and all that, and it doesn't seem to do it for me at all. You feel free to try it, though. I mean, it's not... Some things that don't seem to work for me seem to work for other people, but the heating didn't ever do it for me. So the wet was by far, you could see black and white results. You could do frets that weren't wetted and frets that were, and every time the wetted frets were less tear out. All right, moving on. I'm not sure where it moved again. Okay. Gary Smythe, my son Lee is 45, and that's just the dumb thing he would do to me, only because he knows I can't catch him. Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of thing. He almost wet himself. He was laughing so hard. It's like, are you kidding me? That's not quite the right time. I mean, I could see joking around but not at that really critical moment. That was the worst time to possibly do that. Bill Mumbo, sorry, Jerry, is it 3-phase? Is retired UK electrician asking. No, again, that's the one part I don't know about, is the 3-phase. I really don't, but it's not 3-phase. I know that. It's just I shouldn't say that, because different things have different meanings to different people. When I think of 3-phase, I'm thinking of the big heavy equipment that runs on 3-phase. It's not that. So that's all I can tell you for sure. Whether you would define this as 3-phase because it's got 3 wires coming in, I don't know. But that's not the way we think of it anyway. Again, I was never formally trained as an electrician. I just went on a few jobs with my step-grandfather. His name was Ed Moore. He was a really good guy, wonderful guy. And I helped him on an electrical job or two and learned an awful lot about it in a very short time. So that's why I say I don't consider myself to be an expert. I just know enough to be, fairly safe and be able to do it very well. Let's see, moving on down. See, Mike Jones says, I paid someone to level my frets and do a setup, and it came back not how I expected. Great fret job, but I decided to try myself. First one worked good, beginner's luck. Second one, I realized it's an art. Yeah, the thing I was going to tell you, I just remembered it now that you said that. Of those skills, the repair, the building, the setup, the restoration, and the playing. The setup is the skill I think that's hardest to possess. Just because you can build an instrument doesn't mean you can set one up. It's a different skill set entirely. Building and repairing is different than setup. Setup is an art just like you said, it's an art all by itself. And I'm not saying this as a brag, I'm just saying it as a fact again. I couldn't even tell you how many times, I would say at minimum a dozen and probably a couple dozen times over the years that luthiers brought their instruments to me to set them up because they just couldn't get them set up right. Setup is difficult. It's one of the most difficult things there is, especially because the customer is so critical about your setup. That's the one that's going to eat your lunch. I promise you. It's the setup. So learn the setup. If you're going to do this for a living, the setup is the one to watch out for. It's the one that's going to get you. Of course, everything gets you on an instrument if it's their baby. And I'm seriously telling you, some people treat it, I think they actually think more of them than they do their own kids sometimes. I really do. I'm seriously telling you, there's some way that people have of putting an instrument up on a pedestal. To me, I have a certain amount of reverence for specifically a really old, like a Lloyd Loar or a Stradivari violin. Those things, I have a specific amount of reverence for that. But when you boil that all down, that's why somebody said, would you get nervous if you were working on a $3 million violin? Probably not. Because when you boil it all down, it's wood, it's wire, it's not much more than that. It's really all it is. And, you try to be more respectful when you know you're dealing with the high dollar stuff. I tried to be good with all of it, but when you're dealing with the really high dollar stuff, you try to be a little bit more careful, a little bit more respectful, Take a few extra steps. Let's see. Ronald Todd. Obviously, Rod has figured out how to log on to comments before Jerry opens 30 minutes to go. Yeah, I don't know how he does it. I really don't. Bill Dedrick. Jerry, did you ever meet or play with Buck White? No, never did. I love the Whites. They're great. He's a real musical guy, too. He can, he plays piano. He plays mandolin. And he probably plays other things, but he definitely plays those two things, and he does it really well. He's a really good mandolin player, too. Great piano player, too. Yeah, and of course, you addressed that down there below, too, that he still plays mandolin and piano. Again, I don't read I read one word at a time. That's how I read, guys. There's Carolyn Fike. She said, in 84, I did all the terminal wiring for a 2,500 square foot home we built. Even wired a huge panel board. Well, cool. Yeah, it's not that terribly difficult to do, really. It's just having the confidence and the knowledge to know what to do. It's really not that tough, really. Dottie Hildebrandt, in 1990, we built a house. It was 2,000 square feet. I wired the whole house. It's still standing. Well, cool. My daughter, Rochelle, I don't think she's doing too much of the wiring herself, but she has built some beautiful stuff. I mean, she really has. Her remodeled her houses and stuff. I mean, better than I would do. Honestly, is really very, very good. She's super picky about it. She's kind of like what I'm telling you about these customers with their setup. How super picky? Well, she's super picky when she's building stuff and making it look nice. And it really is nicer than I would do on most of it. Pete C. Bill Mumbo, most residential electrical service is two-phase, 120. So you can get 120 or 240 usually. Three-phase is reserved for commercial services. Yeah, that's basically, you said it better than me, but that's what I was saying. Yeah, I think of three-phase as being for big, heavy industrial equipment and stuff, and I don't know anything about that. Zero, none, not any. Carolyn Fike, shoot, we had a pet wolf's head spider in our house in Florida to keep the palmetto bugs under control. The spider legs is all big as my hand. Yeah. I'm not afraid of anything like that. Snakes, I wouldn't say I'm afraid of them, but I definitely respect, poisonous snakes. Other snakes, they don't bother me much. Poisonous snakes, they can kind of mess up your whole day, so I'm pretty careful with them. Bob Hamby, I know what you mean about copperheads. I got bit when I was 12 or 13 years old in the 70s while hauling hay on my uncle's farm. That's a good time to get bit, really, is that hay thing. We've picked up bales and had snakes bailed in the bale and have them hanging out like this. Yeah, it's not real fun. Yep, that's what you're saying. You got bailed up in your square bale and you didn't see it. Yeah, that's what happens, man. Those copperheads and of course they always get bailed up where their head's hanging out. It's never where their tail's hanging out. It's their heads out like this. And you walk up and pick up that bale and they nail you, So, yeah, I've seen it a couple times over the years. Now, I don't think I've seen it here, though, which is kind of ironic considering how many copperheads we had here at the beginning. Bronson Taylor, I've been watching Caleb, and I was wondering if you think he has forgot a lot of stuff you taught him. Not really, no. He's migrating into his own thing. He's a good kid. He'll have to make his own way. That's just all you can say about it. The spoken song, my tip when doing your first fret job is pucker up. Yeah, that's kind of true too. Dottie Hildebrandt, I think I showed this in that recent video where I was putting the frets in Bill's guitar. And some of you might think that's really a hokey way to do something on the frets, and feel free to feel that way. But I'm telling you right now, when you take your left hand, I'm right-handed, of course, you get the fret started. I'm talking about on the extension that's coming out over the body. You get the fret kind of started. You might even have to tap it lightly to get it started. Then take your hand, put it under that extension, lift up the guitar just lightly, and so that now everything's right there, and you tap it right there, it kills all the shock. It just kills it. There's no shock in that. You can't even hardly feel it hitting your hand even. It's that you can just tell by doing it. I'm seriously telling you, that's a technique you should try to do. It takes a little practice, but I'm telling you, that technique will kill the shock. Where if you just try to drive that in on, like without putting your hand in there and lifting that up, you can break the top of that guitar. I'm telling you right now, that just kills the shock. There's like zero shock, and it just lets the fret go right in, and it's of no consequence whatsoever. So that's a really, really good technique, and you should try that on frets. That's the most critical place is once you get over that extension, what do? And it works great. It really, really does. Moving on down. Dottie Hildebrandt, spider and snakes are no friends of mine. I'm not kidding. I would be better for them to just bite me rather than it really hurt myself trying to get away. Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying there. A lot of people are like that, man. Like I said, these two great big guys, one of them is my brother-in-law. I'm not going to name his name. And another one was, in fact, I did he passed away, and I did a special on him in a video about his songs and music and stuff. And I won't mention his name either, but both of those two people were absolutely terrified of spiders. I mean, they would jump out of a truck going 50 miles an hour. I'm seriously telling you they would. They are terrified of them. And they don't mind telling you they're terrified of them. And I don't know why. I mean, a spider is just nothing. He's gone. Ain't nothing he can do now. Let's see. Bob Hamby got me in my left hand between my index finger and my thumb. Didn't kill me, but made me sick enough that I thought I was going to die. Okay, probably the snake, I would imagine, because I don't think a spider, well, spiders could, I guess, make you that sick. But yeah, snakes, man, snakes, they can mess up your whole day. They can really hurt you bad. Spiders, I've told this before several times too, but I've been bitten 3 times by a brown recluse. Now, the first time I was bitten, I think up on, I think it was this shoulder. I think it was my left shoulder. And it got so stupid hot. I can't even tell you how hot this was. It was way hotter than your normal fever type hot. It was hot, hot. And it stayed that way for like a couple of days. And I would put ice bags on it, and the ice bags would just melt in no time. I'm talking like in a few minutes, they'd be melted. It was that hot, and it stayed hot. It never did fester. It never did do anything else. It just stayed really, really super hot. And it, each day it got a little better. And after about 3 days, it was pretty much okay. The next time I got bit, it was... I think the next 2, I'm trying to remember where they were. They were on my abdomen, I think. And one of them, irritated me pretty bad for a couple of days, but it wasn't any big deal. It didn't get hot as bad as that one. And then the other one, it was gone in a few hours. Couldn't even tell it had bit me. So apparently I feel like I've gotten immune to them now, which is another reason why I just go up and kill them with my finger. That first one was pretty bad. When my mom got bit by a brown recluse, hers did the festering thing and turned, all mushy and just a real big, ugly looking mess, And mine didn't do that. Let's see. Paul Akers, I had a neighbor was bitten 3 times, rattler copperhead, and died of alcohol poisoning. Yeah, I kind of get that. I told you my best friend growing up was, in my teen years, was Sue's cousin, Gary Bickmeyer. And his grandmother, I forget her name now, but we would go out to his farm every weekend for years and years. And she got bit 3 different times by a copperhead on the foot. It was always going in and out of her chicken house. And 3 different times she got bit. I remember distinctly. And she's just a tough old gal, man. It didn't slow her down much at all. Whew. I don't know if I think I'd be curled up in the corner crying. Ronald Todd, Jerry, new Itchy Boots video just came out. Well, I'll be watching that at lunchtime. I'll guarantee you that, because I really like her. Man, her stuff is just crazy. You'd have to shoot me in the head to be able to force me to do the stuff she does for free. She does it and seems to enjoy it. It'd just be torture to me to do the stuff she does. It'd just be torture. I mean, I'd like to see the places from the comfort of my easy chair and on my big 85-inch TV screen. It's perfect, But I couldn't do it, man. The stuff she does, it's just crazy. DE, there are not copperheads where I live in Canada. Are they poisonous? Yes, copperheads are poisonous. They're of the venomous snakes in the United States. I would say they're the least poisonous or least likely to hurt you, kill you. They will swell you up and you will kind of wish that never happened, but it's not going to kill you. In fact, at least up to a few years ago, and I don't remember when, but there had never been a reported death of a copperhead bite that died. I think that has changed. I think there has been a death now, but anyway, it's not very likely to kill you. Rattlesnakes, on the other hand, yeah, you just might as well put your head between your knees and kiss your little spot back there goodbye, because you're going down with a rattlesnake if you don't get really good medical attention. Rattlesnakes, they're just bad all the way to the bone, man. And I think cottonmouths are pretty bad. I think they might be that bad too. And then, of course, apparently the most deadly one in the United States is the coral snake, but it's the least likely probably to actually bite you. They're pretty docile snakes, but I don't know much about them. They're not in this area at all. And really, rattlers, we don't see them ever here either, although they claim to be here. They're supposed to be here. In fact, I know my one of my teachers, I think he was a history teacher, he caught a rattlesnake in his own yard by his dog kennels. And anyway, that's here in Missouri. So I know they're around, but I've never seen a rattlesnake in the wild here in Missouri. Let's see. Well, Coven Point has 3 question marks or 4 question marks, and I don't know. That's all he's got there. Bill Mumbo, thanks, Pete. Majority of UK is 3-phase, though private houses are single-phase as a rule. Okay. Cove Point, if you were running a 120 and a 220 line from the shop instead of the fiber optic, would you have used gray conduit all the way? Well, probably, just because that's the thing you're supposed to do, but I don't think it would make any difference at all. 0, none, not any, because PVC is PVC, But I probably would have run the gray all the way if I were running an electric line, because I've done that in the past, and I have done that with all gray. The reason I did the white was because I could buy it in 20-foot lengths. Nowhere around here could I get the gray in a 20-foot length, and it already had the bell on it, so I didn't have to buy the couplers. So it just made all kinds of sense to use the 20-foot and just PVC water pipe. It's the same stuff, regardless of what they tell you. It's the same stuff. One of them's gray, one of them's white. And they fit together exactly the same too. So there's no problem one way or the other. But if I was doing electric, I'd do it with the gray so that, you would know when you dug it up, it was very likely going to be containing voltage. Again, it's probably just a gimmick to get more money out of you. The gray pipe was, I think, $18 for a 10-foot section. The white pipe was $12 or something, like $6 difference, and it's exactly the same stuff. Yeah, it's just a gimmick. Now, some of you that know plastics will probably telling me I'm full of crap, but and I may be talking about something I know nothing about. But if the difference is important, it's definitely not important to me, because it's the same stuff. It does the same thing. It's exactly the same kind of resistance underground. It's It's just, there's not any difference there, in my opinion, regardless if there's a chemical difference or not. Moving on down here. Ben Boyd, now I know why your taste sensation is so intense. It's your spidey senses activated after the brown recluse. Unfortunately, this taste thing happened way before the brown recluse, unfortunately. But that's funny. Dottie Hildebrand, I'm wondering how you do electrical being colorblind. Well, that's really funny, Dottie, that you bring that up. Well, first of all, in your normal electric, the colors are so contrasting that I can tell the difference. Now, under low light conditions, even that sometimes can be a problem, but you can always use a flashlight. But ironically, and this is really ironic, I've only passed one colorblind test in my whole life. Just one test. All the rest of them failed completely, 100% fail. I mean, like not sort of close, not sort of got some of them right. I mean, like completely 100% fail, except for one test. And the ironic thing was, it was the test back when I first hired in at Southwestern Bell. Back then, they gave you physical, everything. They had their own doctor on site, the whole bit. They don't do that anymore, but back then they did. And so I went into this doctor's office, at Southwestern Bell, And he's given me a physical checkup and all this kind of stuff. And, I passed everything with flying colors. Then now he says, okay, now we need to give you a colorblind test. I'm thinking, oh, dang, this just went in the toilet. This is what I'm thinking, Because by this time, I knew I was colorblind. I up till the time I was a senior in high school, I did not know it. And, I started right out of high school into Southwestern Bell. So this was a brand new revelation for me that I was colorblind. So anyway, I'm dreading this. I'm thinking, what kind of colorblind test is he going to give me? He pulls out this giant cable. I mean, this thing is like 3 inches in diameter. It's huge. And it's got hundreds of pairs of wires in it. He says, match up 3 pairs of wires by color. Well, I just matched up the 3 I could kind of see. It was enough light in there that I could see, well, these 2 here are pretty much the same color. I don't necessarily know if they're yellow or if they're green, but I can tell they're pretty much the same color. So I matched those 2 up, and I matched up like 2 that were blue that I could see, that, and I matched up 2 other ones that I could see. Maybe they were black. I don't know. And he goes, okay, you pass. But I couldn't see the majority of them, But I thought that was pretty funny. That they thought that was some kind of a legitimate colored blind test, because it certainly wasn't, really. Moving on down. Dirty Knob says, I have 223 phase in garage via a 221 phase converter. Yeah, right. I do know about phase converters. I don't really know much about them. I know they exist, and I know that they will convert, your standard electric to a 3-phase. If you have like a metal lathe or a milling machine or something that runs on 3-phase, you can do that and put a phase converter in there. Yeah, I know about that, but I don't really know anything about it specifically. Dottie Hildebrandt, with you being colorblind, have you ever used the glasses that are for colorblindness? Yes. And I really thought that was a miracle. I really did. I got a cheap pair first, and instantly I could see all kinds of colors that I'd never seen before. I mean, just instantly. And I'm like, golly, this is awesome. And I really thought it was great. But the more I talked to people, the more that I wasn't seeing the proper colors, or at least not the way they should be. Like, for instance, I'm trying to remember specifically, the yellow school bus. Trying to think about that, what color it was. But it was different than it was supposed to be. I can't remember what it was now. Like the green signs along the highways that, like, tell you distance or mileage or something, and they're kind of a green highway color or whatever that is. They were like a kind of a blue, a turquoise blue or something. I mean, they just weren't right. And and the colors were exaggerated. Like my red car was just really exaggerated, a weird looking color. But I was seeing colors that I'd never seen before. It was just amazing. So I'm thinking, all right, this is awesome. Now these are just the little cheapy $25 glasses. So I'm going to go ahead and spend the big bucks, and I'm going to get the good ones, the ectochrome or whatever that word was, something like that. I don't remember now. But anyway, I was going to get the good ones. They're like $400, and you have to take their eye test online. And so I did that. I took the eye test online, and I ordered my glasses with my prescription and all that. And I got them, and I put them on, and I went, it was just like stepping on a plum. It was just that kind of a sensation. It was like, I don't see nothing. This ain't nothing. This ain't helping a bit. I mean, I've spent $400 on these stupid things, and I'm not kidding you. I couldn't see any more colors with them than if I'd have just put on my regular glasses. And I was so disappointed. So, I don't know. Maybe it works for some people. And, you see these videos out there where these people get all teary-eyed, and they think, I can't believe I can see. And I'm telling you right now, I think most of it's baloney. That's what I think. At best, it distorts the colors so bad that you might as well just be colorblind, because you're not seeing the right colors anyway. So there you go. That's my take on it. And I did buy another pair of the cheap ones also at one time, and it's more hype than it is reality, in my opinion. Steve Morgan, digging and find a pipe, white, water, gray, electrical, orange, fiber optic. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying there. White is water, gray is electrical, orange is fiber optic. Yeah, well, here's another way to look at it. If you're digging and you find a pipe, be careful. It don't matter what's in it. Be careful. You know, it's just really, if you just stop and think about common sense will guide you every single time. I'm done. Thanks for being here today, guys. 170 viewers are still on here, and we will see you tomorrow.